you know, people have often asked me, do you have any advice for being a musician or whatever, a producer? I do. And I think the first thing you do is to get a good education. And, you know, and listen to all types of music, classical, jazz, and learn to write, learn to conduct, learn something about the history of music, why you are at a certain spot in history, and why you haven't moved. I mean, these things I think are very important. I mean, I was a rebel at school. Maybe you should, as a student or as a composer or whatever, should be a rebel. I think all great things come from these idiots. Like, not that I've invented anything, but I've done a lot of crazy things. I split up the orchestra. I remember writing a piece at Juilliard at one time, and my instructor says, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" I said, "Well, I frankly don't know." I said, "We got this concert tomorrow." I said, "I really don't know." I said, "So I had an idea." I said, "I'm going home." I went back and I cut it all up. There were 2 pages of score. I got this on, and I cut it and I pasted it. I took out a lot of score and I pasted it all over the. So these two pages became maybe 6 pages or 7 pages. I said, "Okay, now I'm going to split up the orchestra. I'm going to put the trumpets on stage, the percussion on stage. In the mezzanine, I'm going to put 10 saxophones, and in the far balcony, I'm going to have 4 trombones and 2 tubas, and then downstairs, I'm going to have a solo singer. And we're going to have 5 conductors." The guy said, "You're out. This will never work." I said, I remember hearing a piece where they had the orchestra on stage and the solo trumpet was in the balcony. I said, "Well, we just augmented it with, you know, four other conductors, and I split it up." The piece was reviewed. I have a review of this. From the Herald Tribune, the woman came, Peggy Glanville Hicks, came to hear the concert. After the concert, the review, she said it was like thunder coming from the floor. She couldn't believe it. It was like something mushrooming out of like an atomic bomb. And the way I had written it with cacophony, you know, because it was very difficult to write saxophone parts to make it harmonically with somebody. It's good. Getting back to where I said you're using different textures, different colors. You know, you can put all the trumpets in one kind of color and the percussion on another. And what happened was they were throwing spitballs at me. I'm trying to conduct the other 4 conductors, and I got the spitballs coming over the lights at Juilliard. So at the end of the concert, it got such a rave review that it won me a $1,500 prize with BMI. And not only that, but we did a concert earlier, and the president, we had great arrangers in the band, and we had a great jazz band. And the president, and I have this on a record too, I was up in the editing room making a record for posterity for the school. And he made the speech, and he said, "I've listened to everybody this week, all the people from across the country, around the world, here at Juilliard as a symposium." And he says, "The real music, the real thing that happened was Wednesday at noon, when this bunch of guys got up and gave a concert." He said, "It was unreal, the textures that came through and the arrangements and everything. This was the best thing of the whole week." Now, if you don't believe me, I can give you a copy of the record. And but I think that
You were a student?
Huh?
You did that when you were a student?
I was a student, yeah. Then I got a couple of scholarships while I was there, and then I got a couple of Guggenheims for writing music, and I worked with Aaron Copland up in Tanglewood one summer. And so it was a combination of everything, you know, being a rebel, trying to do something, trying to destroy the blues, trying to create something. And we had a lot of wonderful things going at the time, but and nowadays the musicians don't have a chance to work with other musicians. They do in a school situation, but not in an improvisational kind of situation where they come to to a club and sit in, or a loft. We had, there were a lot of lofts, when I was growing up, that you could go and you could sit in. I remember sitting with Ornette Coleman one night. That was an experience that that will live on in my memory forever. I mean, it was a snowy night, and I always carried my instrument with me. I was doing a date at 30th Street. I said, I think I'll go down and see him at the 5 spot. I go down at the 5 spot, and I asked if I could sit in. He said, yeah. So I get up there and I get ready to play. And so I said to the guy, what do you want me to do? The guy said, well, man, what do you want to play? I said, let's play There'll Never Be Another. He said, we don't play those kind of tunes. I said, okay. being adventurous, I said, holy Jesus, what am I getting into here? I mean, I heard them playing, they were going, so I said, well, let's do another. Cat said, man, we don't play those kind of tunes. So Ornette said, well, we're going to play, I'll Never Know. I don't know what the hell this song was. And he stomps it off. I said, holy Jesus, I'm holding on for dear life. I said, what can I do? So I said to the trumpet player, I said, so what do I do? What do I do? He said, man, just get up there and wail. I said, oh, okay. And I'm going, boop, boop, woo, ah, and I fitted in quite well with the group, but it was an experience. I never forgot it. But working with Ornette, was really a challenge. So there again, you got to have a couple of ears. If you don't listen, I mean, you could be up there in left field and not know where the hell you are. I mean, I was trying to figure out, in my own mind, and I'm listening and I'm trying to anticipate. But then I had complete abandonment, and I said, this is it. And later on, in my early records, the first one I made in 1953 was like that, where we had 5 improvisational tracks on one record with Rudy Van Gelder, and he thought I was a nutcase. I said, look, you've got the one tape here, because I tried this out in the studio up at Juilliard, but we only had the turntable. And as we tried, we had 2 turntables, and as I was adding a part, it was getting slower and slower and slower. But once we got the tape, then my first record, which is, you got to take your money and invest it where you think you should. I had $500 in the bank. That's all I had. So I said, I'm going to invest it, make a record. And I made it with Debut Records with Charlie Mingus' company. And so when I went to Rudy Van Gelder, I said, put the tape on. And I'm up there, I'll give you a copy of all these things because they're all there. And then I said, look, Rudy, take that off now, put that on another machine, and put another tape on, and record the 2 tracks, the one that I just did and this new one. And I did it 5 times. And I wrote out a score so it would have some continuity, and I knew, I just didn't want it to be helter-skelter without some dynamic range to it. But I did that, and it worked out very well. And when we first put it out, people panned the bejesus out of it. They said, well, what does he think he is? This is not jazz. This is not this. We were panned, and I had to live it down for years. And I said, look, I was just trying to, in my humble way, I was so naive at that time. I was just trying to do something a little different that might make sense. And some of the pieces on there are really great. We had overdubs. In those days they never did that. They might have done it somewhere, but I remember doing an overdub with one of the tracks, and I was unhappy with what I finally ended up with. I was an employee at that time at CBS, but I was making this record for them too, and I went up to you could go up to the studio and get an engineer and just go up and do it. Nowadays it's you need an act of Congress for having. And I went up there and I added, and I said, put the tape on and put another machine on. I'm just gonna play it. I'm just gonna do it once, and I did. I made one pass, and that was it. And it's called Sounds of May. It became a very important piece of music for a lot of documentary films. And Jesus, I still play it every once in a while. It still sounds pretty good, and it was done, over 50 years ago. For young people, get a good education. Find a career that you could, if you have to change, you can change too. I mean, I wasn't that lucky because I was welded to being a musician. But I think, learn to copy music, learn how to write music, learn how to do all the things that a producer should do, and try to get as much experience as you possibly can. Because without that, you're a dead duck. I mean, if you think you're going to do it from living in a closet, you can't do that. But I've helped a lot of people say, look, you're a good musician, but there might be some tough times coming. Learn how to copy music. I mean, I still copy my own parts, not all of them, but I still copy parts. I mean, I think it's important to be able to grab a pen and say, okay, and write it all out and look at it and say, Jesus, I remember when I was at Juilliard, I had some not bamboo, but strips of wood in my apartment, and I used to pin up everything. I'd write it, and I'd pin it all up, and then I'd look at it and study it, and say, well, this was before I even had a chance to get a Guggenheim or anything like that, or a prize from BMI, and it was just one thing after another. But I think you really have, if you're dedicated, you might make it. But don't let anybody deter you from what if you believe in something, and work with somebody that's really trying to help you. If you got the courage to do that and the discipline to do that, I think you'll be all right. I mean, the music business today is tough. There's very little outlet. So I would like to become a lawyer because I'd like to sue everybody that I've been working with over the years, like these record companies. I mean, I think they're a bunch of crooks. I mean, and we're finding out more and more that the record companies are crooks. I mean, they don't pay the royalties. There's EMIs, and this guy Spitzer is just now suing. It just got, I don't know how many millions, a couple $100 million back royalties. I mean, they don't like to pay royalties. They don't want to pay you for anything because they think you could, this is the way to do it, that you like to play, but you got to eat. If you don't eat, you can't work. If you can't work, you might as well die. I work every day. I write music every day, and you got to be determined to do it, and you do it religiously every day. It's like reading a paper, doing whatever you have to do. After a while, it becomes second nature to you, and you just sit there, and it just comes out one after another. I mean, you can, and it doesn't have to be a simple piece. It can be very complex, and I've written a lot of complex pieces lately. I just had 2 concerts in Baltimore for 12 clarinets. You say, well, why would you write for 12 clarinets? Because the guy gave me a performance. Not only once, but twice. And he got alto clarinets, B-flat clarinets, bass clarinets, contrabass clarinets, and the pieces are quite successful. And I think I want to record them. Now, I was supposed to record them a few weeks ago, but I was too sick. I couldn't even get on the plane. I mean, with the gout and everything else that I had, and it was just too much for me, so I had to postpone the recording. I said, look, I told the guy, you want to do it? Be my guest. I'll pay for it. Just go do it. The guy said, I would like you there. And I said, well, look, if you're going to wait for me, then this is what you got to tell your players. I want them to listen to the music. There's a lot of improvisation here. Now, if they listen to the music, they'll get their improvisation from the music. The tonalities, the dissonances, the rhythmic aspect. And sure enough, the last concert they sent me a tape, they did it. And because the first tape they sent me, it was like they were doing Benny Goodman licks and all kinds of funny little licks. I said, that's not the music. What you've done, you jumped over the boundary line. I said, and landed some other place. I said, you've got to make sure that the music, it relates to the music. I said, now if you listen to the music, you'll get your cue. And I said, don't come out and go play for 10 bars constantly. Leave some holes. So you go, boot, doot, doot, doot. dude, da. And sure enough, they did that, and it worked out beautifully. I mean, I've got a copy of the record. In fact, I have it with me. But I want them to send me a CD copy because there was one little glitch in the cassette tape. But this is what they got to do. You got to be determined. You got to follow through, and you got to try to reach out every day. And you got to, if you're sitting home and you don't know what to do, you start writing music. I mean, if you need some help, I help people all the time. People come to me and say, "Well, what about this?" And I said, "Well, you should do this." And I've done this quite a few times. I did this in Europe, and I made a record with a English band, and I had all the composers sitting around me over there. I went over there. I spent about a week with them, and I went through the scores, and I took each guy separately, and I said, "Look, you may not like what I'm going to say, but you do whatever you want to do. If you want to leave it the way it is, that's perfectly all right with me." And we would sit there and we would analyze the music. And sure enough, the record, and I've got the record of this, final record, it is terrific. These guys went back, changed it a little bit, and came back with a different attitude and made it.